Could you say a few words about the falling out on the one hand of the Saudi Arabia and the UAE on the one hand and Qatar on the other? Are you moving toward a resolution of that situation?
It's not a falling out. It's just we don't want to have anything to do with them. The Qataris, since the mid-90s, have been sponsoring radicals. They have been inciting people. They have become a base for the leadership for the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood, you have to keep in mind, is what begot us Takfir and Hijrah, which begot us Al-Qaeda, which begot us Al-Nusra. The Qataris allow their senior religious clerics to go on television and justify suicide bombings. That's not acceptable. The Qataris harbor and shelter terrorists. That's not acceptable. And Nashri, the head of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula in 2000, entered Saudi Arabia on a Qatari passport. We captured Al-Qaeda types coming into Saudi Arabia with Qatari passports. The Qataris know this. The Americans know this. The world knows this. The Qataris are funding dissidents in the Emirates and Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and in Kuwait in order to cause problems for those governments and to create instability. Why would you do this? The Qataris pay ransom to terrorist groups, including $500 million to Hezbollah in Iraq, $50 million to Qasem Soleimani, according to text messages between the Qatari ambassador in Iraq and the foreign minister of Iraq, including I don't know how much to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Is that acceptable? If we gave $1 to Hezbollah in Iraq, we'd be sued in a court down the street. And so the Qataris use their media platforms to spread hate. The Qataris send weapons to Al-Qaeda affiliated militias in Libya. The Qatari Emir was conniving with Gaddafi on how to overthrow Saudi Arabia. The Qataris connected Gaddafi with a Saudi dissident in London who they fund, who connected the Libyans with a group in Mecca with the objective of assassinating the then Crown Prince, later King of Saudi Arabia. Is this acceptable? We have phone conversation that the Libyans gave us after they overthrew Gaddafi, where the then Emir of Qatar is telling Gaddafi how he's recruiting princes and tribal leaders and military officers and members of the royal family to cause mischief and destabilize Saudi Arabia, and predicted that within 10 years there would be no royal family in Saudi Arabia. Is this acceptable? They do the same thing in Bahrain and in Kuwait and in the Emirates. So in 2012, we cut off relations with them, the same countries. And a year later, they came back and agreed that they will end all of this nonsense. And they signed an agreement. And nothing happened. So this time, we said, you know what? We're not going to deal with you unless you change. We will not allow you. There's a list of terror finances that the US puts out, the UN puts out, and a number of them are living openly in Qatar, raising money and giving it to bad people. Is this acceptable? Shouldn't be. Why do the Qataris get away with it? Because I think people see a young country, young leadership, they buy fancy buildings, they have a nice airline, and they think, wow, these guys are really modern. But we have to deal with the dark side that I just explained. And so that's why we said, unless you change, we're not going to deal with you. Now, what happened since we took this action? They signed an MOU with the US on terror financing that they had refused to sign before. They changed their laws to allow the introduction of evidence provided by a foreign government. They reduced their support for Hamas, which opened the door for reconciliation among the Palestinians. All of these are good things. Now we're waiting for them to continue to implement all the things that they promised to implement. They refuse to engage in a dialogue about implementing these issues, and we refuse to talk to them. And so for us, and we've said this to them, We've taken the steps that we took. No dealing with Qatar. You can't overfly airspace. You can't import things from our market. We will not. The military cooperation is still ongoing because that's a GCC issue, and with the US, so we do that. But the other stuff is all frozen until they change. And I hope they change. And if they don't change, we're patient people. We'll wait for 10, 15, 20 years, 50 years. How long did it take you with Castro in Cuba? We can do the same with Qatar. We'll have no issue. It would be nice of them if they acknowledge that they have a problem, and then they can fix the problem. And the problem with the Qataris is they're still in denial. And we need to move them from denial to introspection so they can fix the problem. We have no hostility towards Qatar. We just vehemently oppose their behavior, which is very dangerous to us and has endangered our citizens and has endangered our security. And that's why we took the steps we took.